Eddie and these guys, they're so wealthy, right? Like they're unspeakably wealthy. Like they may be able to self-fund for years before they ever run into this problem. And that's kind of crazy to think about, especially if they're running like lean. And I do think that like a lot of the ways that Eddie thinks about business development are like with the times, whereas it feels like Clancy and like a lot of the executives at Twitch are years behind. And now you know, remember Eve?
Yeah.
Like so like this is I totally remember Game and all this stuff. Eve has this problem of like being around for 20 years. There's spaghetti code that just like POSs or stations, like per player owned stations.
I feel like they finally fixed that a few years ago, but I
did they really?
Yeah, there was a big
okay, yeah,
POS
shit. Like there's so many things like that in Eve where it's like, okay, we're trying to implement a feature, but we're running into this problem where 20 years ago, this weird developer like put in this thing, and now it breaks the entire local chat every single time that we implement like this like one change to jump freighters. Yeah, and I think that Twitch is like stuck in that to the extreme. Like they can't. They're like the ship. It takes so long to turn that you just, unless you build it from the ground up like Eddie's doing, you just can't get an efficient engine anymore. And so when I first started out, like thinking about Kick, I was like, there's no way this website is going to work. Like this is insane. But now the more that I think about it, the more that I think it actually could. The huge vulnerability that nobody wants to talk about, and Eddie is even addressed directly, and I'll just say it, I know this is controversial, this is like gets clips, blah, blah, blah. I'm not about that game, like I don't even do any like that stuff anymore. Like, but like unless you address the problems of like Adin Ross and like the people that are like very clearly platforming just stuff that like, I have some pretty risky brands in my portfolio that I work for, that like they're willing to do some pretty crazy shit. Like they'll take risks on they'll do the quotation brand risk stuff. They will not even turn their head at Kick because they'll take one look at like what some of the influencers on there are doing, and they'll be like, yeah, we're out. Like no way.
True, but I mean like that's always the dilemma of every like early platform, right?
Yeah, but like.
You're not going to pick up like your super brand safe content because you have to pay like an ultra premium price for them, and then like you're probably trying to pick up like stuff on the outskirts. Although they probably paid a lot for Adin Ross too, but I don't know. It seems like that's every new platform. You're just like, listen, we've got a really lax TOS. We don't give a. We don't have to count out of advertisers. We're just going to bring in whoever the to drive up user acquisition as much as possible before we like get serious. You know.
You can, but I think the difference is that. There's a couple of things there, right? So like the first thing is at a certain level you become like motherless.com or WorldStar Hip Hop, and then sort of all the brands kind of write off your website, and if you have no moderation and no policing, I'm talking about like crazy like platforming Nazi level shit, anti-LGBTQ stuff to the extreme. The kind of stuff we're seeing on Kick right now is not the kind of stuff that when a brand has a first impression of you is going to be easy to forgive years later. Whereas like if you've got a guy on Twitch that was like lighting a chair on fire and peeing it out, okay, like that's like something that like people can get over in time. But like actual hate level stuff, there's a really like I'll tell you exactly what's going on like in the brand risk like quotations like world right now. The truth is that very few agencies run everything. So like we're talking like maybe a couple dozen maximum. And I think we're actually at Nova, we're coming close to breaking into that that like walled garden, where brands basically go, okay, who can I trust to run my advertising, and are they going to do like a pretty good job, and like do they fit the KPIs, blah blah blah. And then they outsource all that shit. They don't want to do it themselves. They do have some internal marketing, but that's like for UGC and all kinds of other. So anyway, agencies basically make the decision. We get a budget, right? So they'll say, here's $500,000, here's $1 million. Here's $10 million, figure out what you're going to do this year based on like our kind of direction. And then we decide where to spend that money. People think there's a conversation going on, and I have this disagreement with Tyler a lot, where he will say the world is going to realize at one point that these brand risk people are authentic and they drive more conversions because of it. They drive, I'm obviously saying his argument in a more
eloquent way, yeah,
efficient way, yeah. But basically, we will realize that the brand risk people are like the real ones, and then they're going to be the one, and then that's going to be like the new leaders of the new world. And I can tell you unequivocally, it is the exact opposite. Brands are more scared than ever I've never had to deal with more questions about brand risk and more questions about like these problems because they are so polarized by shit like Budweiser that like when like they are so afraid of like half of their market share dropping off overnight because of one wrong tweet or something like that. I don't think we're gonna, and like so back to that like dozen agencies problem. Once those agencies take a look at something, and it takes something like a Forbes or XQC level deal to make them look at it, which I really think was the purpose of the XQC deal. Once they take a look at that and they see that kind of stuff on the platform, they will often write off that platform for years or indefinitely. And that's what I'm worried about with Kick. I don't think it's possible unless Kick takes extreme measures to curtail those those content creators very fast.
Sure. Yeah, I kind of agree. I feel like at some point, though, like if you can get the user acquisition high, if you do acquire enough people, that like at some point you're not going to be able to say no, right? Like people thought that every advertiser would flee from Twitter and never return, but I mean, like it's Twitter. You're really not going to buy cheap advertising space, you know, given the opportunity to if everybody else is running away. So I do feel like to some extent, like getting a lot of users is going to be important to their success, but. Yeah, I don't know how much you can counteract. Like, but then at some point too, they're also gonna have to like curb like the Adin Rosses and shit. Like, that's not gonna be allowed to stand, you know?
Yeah, but like, what I guess like where our where we differ maybe is on the like the point at which that happens. Like, I would say I think that point is like
happened
now
already. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's because like if you look at like something like Twitter, we stopped spending on Twitter. I mean, we had several $100,000 running there. I'm not sure how much it was, but like we stopped spending on Twitter and we did it along with every other brand because of uncertainty. So it wasn't because of brand risk, and we did it because like we weren't really sure what was going to happen next.
Sure.
And like marketing and stocks and all that shit, they don't like uncertainty. We don't like it because like we're not sure like maybe this platform's going to be completely different. But once it became apparent that it wasn't going to be like a total like shit show, like everybody just turned back on their ads, including us.
Yeah.
And it was fine. But like the problem on Kick is like, how do I explain this? You can get classified as like a website that like has a pretty generous user base, but you just never go there. Look at like 4chan, for example, right? Like, do you think that like a Fortune 500 company is ever going to advertise there? There's no shot, right?
Probably
like,
not. But I also don't think that, I could be wrong, I don't think 4chan has that many users. Is there data on that? It always feels like this really big, ominous website, but like it wouldn't surprise me. For instance, I'm gonna throw totally
it's like 10 users.
No, not 10 users, but it wouldn't surprise me if like Reddit was like 1 or 2 orders of magnitude larger. That there might be like 100 times as many users on Reddit as 4chan. That wouldn't surprise me if that was the case.
Yeah. How many users? That's a really good question. I actually have no idea. Wikipedia says 22 million unique monthly viewers.
Oh, that's more than I thought.
It's a lot. But I guess like my point is that like, okay, yeah, let's go back to the theory because like this is really interesting. Like, I don't think that a brand will ever make the decision to advertise in a place, even on the super cheap,
with
or for
like
any
Adin
reason,
Ross,
if they feel that the risk is enough to drive significant controversy to themselves.
That's probably true. If Pornhub were to start selling ads for 1 cent, Coke would probably never buy ads on Pornhub, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And furthermore, actually that gets into another problem, which is payment processing, which is that as soon as you cross certain barriers, companies like Stripe, which run the entire backend for Kick right now, will actually back off from you. And that's actually, you used them as an example, they can't use traditional payment processors because those payment processors and those banks will not support pornography. And as a result, there are like, and actually the real reason for that is chargebacks. Because there's something like 1 to 3% chargebacks on pornography purchases. So those payment processors have just said, we aren't going to support that because it costs us way too much to process all these transactions, all these false transactions. And if you run into that kind of situation of like that brand risk enough on a platform like Kick, I think the payment processors start having a problem, and then you're really So like let's say for example that the pornography stuff doesn't get addressed on Kick, or it's like considered like way too sexual. It's a subjective line, but once it's crossed, those payment processors just decide, no, we're good. And then like that happened, like, and that's like OnlyFans even considered changing their entire business model because they were so afraid of payment processors. Like, payment processors are enormously powerful.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically the ones that do regulation for a lot of the internet, right? Like, payment processors are the ones that decided what type of is okay, not okay. That didn't come from Congress. It literally came from like, we're not supporting this. Like payment processors essentially deleted 90% of the videos on all the mainstream sites when they were trying to be in compliance and shit.
Yeah, they run the show, man. Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of those considerations going on. The other thing is like, one of the things I've been thinking about with like stuff like DMCA on Kick, where a lot of people like including me in the past, like have come at platforms a lot for violating safe harbor. That is like people like Adin streaming the Super Bowl and stuff like that. Now I think like I'm not even sure that anyone ever will police anything related to DMCA. Like I don't know if like that'll ever become the case. The amount of time that it takes like a federal body to go after someone like Kick, even to become aware of them, it's so glacial that I don't know if they'll ever suffer at that level. I do think that like the music industry and the entertainment industry will take notice, but I don't really understand the implications of that or like what that'll mean, like practically.
Yeah, I think the way the DMCA is structured right now, like the site should essentially be shielded from liability. So it basically comes down to if like companies want to start suing streamers, which I'm surprised they don't at all. But
well, the right federal agency could make the argument that Kick is violating safe harbor because they are not taking decisive action to ban things like a 200,000 viewer stream.
But it wouldn't be, that would have to come through like a court case, right? Because I'm pretty sure that when you talk about like copyright violation and stuff, these are all like civil matters. It's not going to be like, it's not going to be a criminal matter that like a court, the state or federal government pushes action against or whatever, right? It's going to be somebody making the argument that they should be able to hold Kick liable and et cetera,
Yeah, which is why, like I said, I don't think that DMCA is going to impact Kick on like a real level. That's exactly why I think it's not going to happen. Somebody could sue XQC because he streamed, what was it? Some movie recently, Dark Knight or something.
Yeah, The Dark Knight, yeah.
Yeah, that can and should happen and would be really funny.
Wow,
but,
hater.
For me. But like, Kick's problem is so neither you or I can know, like, if their financial situation is such that they can support the website without advertising or not. My understanding of like the people running Kick is that they have so much money they can probably keep it running almost indefinitely if they run the business lean.
Sure. I mean, I've got enough money to probably feed like 2 or 3 homeless guys outside of my house forever. That doesn't mean I'm going to do it, right? Like, so I'm sure they could theoretically support Kick for however long. I think Eddie guy might be a billionaire, so they could do it. But I mean, I think he is. They probably don't want to bleed money forever. I'm sure they want some path towards monetization or something, right? Or
if that's the case, then you can't you're in trouble because you can't change the subscription shit because that's really what's pushing you above Twitch.
That's never going to change, yeah.
And you've promised not to.
Yeah, you can't do that.
And then you also can't change like the donate, all that like baked in shit, like the splits. So now you have to do advertising. Now where does that bring you? Back to me, sure. Right? Like, and I just think that Kick is so far from
being advertiser ready.
Yeah, man. And I mean like any advertisers, and they'll be like, well, have a couple of advertisers interested. I know it's not true. There's no significant advertiser willing to drop. And then like okay, like here's the thing, right? Even if they were gonna do it, like let's say, okay, sure, like I'm ready, I'm ready to spend right now. I'll throw $500,000 on the website. How? Right? Like there's no system in place. There's no like white glove service. There's no I don't know what I'm getting. There's no deliverables. There's no I just physically can't spend the money. Like never like brand stuff. I physically can't spend the money.
Yeah.
It's not possible because like it doesn't. Like when I go do a media buy for Twitch, they're like, you get front page and you get to run these like ads and these ads appear on stream. That system doesn't exist and isn't built into IVS natively. So they would have to build that from the ground up. And the smartest way to do that, if Eddie is wise, is to partner with an ad network, right?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. They bought IVS, right? Like if other people are already doing it on their own, why in-house it when you could just contract it out to somebody else, right?
I appreciate that, Destiny.
All right, bye.
Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.